So, your question is, what musical style would you like to record outside of what you're known for?
Ooh, that is a good question. So I guess as far as like the videos I put out are concerned, I'm more known for the country stuff. But I came up through metal. I don't know how known I am for metal. I know people know that I kind of mash them up at times, but my first answer would be metal. But if that's not the best answer, because I have done a lot of videos with that, then maybe funk, to be honest with you. Like guys like Corey Wong, like I could never play that stuff. It's something I have very little experience with, and I listen to that kind of stuff, and it's just puts you in a feel good mood. It just sounds, it's really interesting to me, but it's not something I can do very well. So I would say maybe funk, if not metal.
Yeah, that's a good, because it's funny because that question, I was going to ask it to someone else because I did have someone booked before your one. But then it's obviously been, the questions kind of now been passed on to you. And actually, I think that's a good question for you because, that's a
great question.
Because I've seen both the metal and the kind of country side of things in terms of your videos anyway. So I thought that was quite a good one. That was, So funk, I think for me, I'd rather do funk bass than funk guitar.
Man, yeah. I mean, either one for me, but yeah, I love both of them, but the funk bass as well, for sure.
Yeah, it just has like I feel like the groove, for me, funk is about like the groove. And I feel like the guitar, I'm a guitarist myself, but I just feel like it doesn't do, for me, I wouldn't feel that same involvement in the way that I would as like a metal guitarist, you feel like you're really driving it home as a metal guitarist, whereas I feel like maybe as a funk guitarist, maybe I'm mischaracterizing them. I don't know.
I think I can go both ways. I guess it just depends on the band or the act, but I definitely think you're right. Yeah. The bass shines a lot more in funk than a lot of other things. So
yeah. What about drums? If you had to play drums in any,
have I ever played drums?
Or if you had to be a drummer for any style of music?
Maybe, does it have to be a style that I don't already do?
It can be anything. Yeah.
Oh, probably country.
Okay. That's interesting.
I think maybe, in my teen years or so, I would have said metal, but there's something really impressive to me these days about really, really solid country drummers that don't overplay and aren't flashy, but can be anytime they want to, like who could blow your doors off anytime they wanted to, but who kind of know their role and they don't overplay. And what ends up being their like flashy point is just how tight and dynamic and supportive of a role, I guess, they play at the band as a whole. Like when people do that really well, they're not really going to impress anyone that isn't a musician necessarily, but when you're listening for that in particular, it's to me, it's just a lot more impressive when you're just perfect at that rather than trying to show off, how fast you can play or how many different shells you can hit within a 3-second time span or something, just for the sake of doing it. Right. Just so play into the song and being super tight. Those are huge for me.
Go on.
I was just going to say, it gets done, I think, more often in country because country drumming is so, I guess, simple in a way compared to, like metal, where it's supposed to be really fast and energetic, whereas country is more stripped back. So for that being the case with country, that's what's really impressive to me is when people are really tight and don't overplay.
Yeah, the thing I find with I suppose the thing I'm yet to find with country when I have gone and sort of had the odd listen, because it's not a genre I often delve into, and I don't think it's very, particularly here in the UK, I don't think there's a massive scene for country music. It's just it doesn't maybe it just obviously a lot of people like it, and a lot of people like the classic kind of bangers, the more like pop country stuff, but I think something I'd be intrigued to hear is when I think of country, beyond just like the super, super poppy stuff, the only kind of person I think I know as like a guitarist and like a sort of popular country person is someone like Brad Paisley, you know. And again, that's coming from an outside. I'm not saying, I'm not acting like he's the only one. It's just my knowledge is so limited.
He's one of the big dogs for sure.
Yeah. And funnily enough, some faces come to mind, but I can't think of any names. But who, you know, if you're a guitarist and you are interested in having a listen to some more country music that has an involved guitar element in it, who do you think people should maybe be checking out?
Well, the first name that's always going to come to mind, I think I speak for most country guitar players when given that question, is Brent Mason. He is the most recorded country guitar player of all time. So, you know, from the 80s through now, everything from Alan Jackson and, you know, like all of the hit Alan Jackson songs with cool guitar parts and stuff, for 9 times out of 10 it was Brent Mason. And really anything from the 80s through now, with less so these days, there's more session guys on the modern more poppy stuff, but even the early 2000s, anything with like hot guitar licks in the country world more than likely was Brent Mason. And I mean, the guy is the absolute king of country guitar. You know, like I said, everybody was using him on everything throughout the 80s and 90s, especially. And he's got his own solo stuff, but really, man, I would really tell someone to just dig through all of Brent's catalog, all the things he played on, his solo stuff, you know, which is on Spotify. One song comes to mind, Hot Wired, if somebody wants to really just listen to world-class musicians just losing their minds on a song. But yeah, so Brent Mason, other guys like Johnny Highland, Vince Gill, you know, obviously Brad Paisley. Yeah, there's a lot of names. I mean, but I think that would be a good start. Kind of has different styles in there. Brad Paisley he's got his own really unique style. Brad's a monster guitar player, obviously, but the more you listen to him, the more you'll start noticing that he's got this very different style to him that's really cool. A lot of pull-offs and stuff that he does. But I think that'd be a good start. Yeah. So Brent Mason, Johnny Highland, Vince Gill, Brad Paisley, any of those guys would get you right for sure.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Yeah. It's like, that's sort of almost coming. It's almost a question for me more than anyone else. Cause I know the sound. I'm so familiar with what the sort of country guitar is in, especially more the lead stuff. I know what the sound kind of is, in the same way I know what a metal sound is or a funk sound is, in terms of like the techniques and the styles and the sort of little inflections and things. But if you ask me to name any names, like Johnny Highland's another one I could name.
Really?
But yeah, but beyond that, like I'm a bit clueless on that. So it's interesting to hear some names. I'll definitely go and check them out. But I noticed, so like obviously I first saw your kind of stuff from sort of country shredding and all of that. That's when I first kind of saw your sort of videos and things come up. I noticed there's a lot less, or you've been putting out a lot less on like Instagram and stuff in recent times.
Yeah.
What's kind of the shift there for you?
Well, it started because I have been pretty dormant in a way over the last year, and I guess it just started. I got busy, right? Just for a normal month or so period of time, and prior to that, I think I was trying to do 2 videos a month, or one, or at least one a month, maybe 2 a month. I've never really tried doing something like weekly. It was always like 1 or 2 a month. And then I had like a month or so there where I was just too busy to do it. And I think it just got me out of the groove of things, you know? And then, I just kind of got out of that routine. Went through maybe a little bit of burnout. I was still playing guitar, but, stayed busy and just making time for it. It wasn't as easy as it used to be, even though I could have done it, you know? So I guess a little bit of burnout and just being busy and kind of got me out of the routine. And then, currently trying to get myself back into it. I just released that Fortin Hex Drive pedal demo, and that went pretty well. So that kind of lit a fire back again. So hopefully we can get back in the swing of things and keep them going. But I guess it was a good little break for a little bit.
So you see that break as kind of like a positive kind of time for you to just crack on with what you want to be spending time on?
Yeah, in some ways, for sure. In that time, I did a lot of gigs, a lot of studio work. Everything kept going as usual. Just fewer videos, and the way I do my videos, it does take quite a bit of time to do. Because it's a full mix and everything. I have drums and everything in there, and mixing it and all that. But so it can become tedious. But yeah, I guess it was good in some ways, but in other ways, I like to keep things rolling so that I don't lose relevancy in some way. That definitely hurts the Instagram algorithms as well a little bit. But at the end of the day, it's more about your well-being, I guess, in some ways, and making sure you're enjoying it and it doesn't become a chore. So if the break is useful and keeping that going, then I'd say it's a good thing for sure.
Have you found something I've noticed among people that put content out, like musical kind of content? Have you noticed that has translated, gaining a following online? Has that translated much over to like concrete work coming your way in the way of like production, guitar stuff? Or because I noticed I've heard a couple of people saying how they found it frustrating that the follow account doesn't always translate to like practical if you think about, say, like 20, 30, 40, 50,000 people following you, you think, oh, well, that's 20,000 people that will want to pay for guitar lessons. When obviously it's not. It doesn't translate in that way. Have you found that gaining a following has sort of launched your other pursuits as well?
Oh yeah, definitely. And that's I never started the videos for that reason. I started making videos when I was probably 13. I did a bunch of metal videos on YouTube throughout my teens, a lot of which I've taken down by now. But and then around 18 or so, I stopped making videos for several years. Still playing guitar, of course, but I just kind of got out of the habit of making videos. YouTube changed a lot at the time or whatever. So, but yeah, no, at that point, throughout my teens, I never did it for any other reason than I enjoyed doing it. And when I started back, it was the same thing. And then I did start kind of getting a small following together, and then endorsement deals came through, and that was a huge thing for me. I've gotten a lot of gigs through the videos that I've done. So I mean, those are the main two things, though, right? Just endorsements and things like gigs, session guitar work, stuff like that, studio work. So it definitely helps as far as that goes, no doubt.
Sounds like you're kind of quite, certainly working on being quite like a multifaceted kind of musician. A lot of people are quite sort of one-dimensional. It's not a bad thing, if you're really good at one thing, that's really great. But is that kind of, do you ever find yourself like sort of juggling a lot of things, like musical sort of endeavors, and struggling to keep them up?
Yeah, being someone who's very involved in both metal and country, that it does become a problem. Everybody kind of, at least when you provide a service, there's like a rule of thumb that most entrepreneurs will tell you, or through your reading, you'll come across, and that's to niche down and become really good at one thing. A lot of people preach that over and over. And while it's very true, I've always kind of wanted to be someone, or wanted to work towards being someone who could be that person for two things instead of just one thing. And that's hard to do. I don't know many people that have done it. So part of me some days is like, maybe I should just start picking one and just stick to that, so that people looking up my work or whatever will see that that's what I do. That's what I specialize in. And be more confident, rather than someone who's wanting to work with me for country, looking at my metal stuff and wondering if I really do country enough or whatever. So that does kind of create an issue sometimes. But I would love, in a perfect world, to definitely specialize in those two things, rather than having to niche down and pick one thing out of the bunch. Country and metal for sure.
Yeah, because I was kind of one of the questions that I sort of wrote down for you was like, for musicians that are sort of maybe umming and ahhing about where they want to take their pursuits, whatever that might be, whether it's like production, session work, creating, education, whatever. There's loads of things, and I find I'm kind of teetering on the edge of loads of these different things. What would your advice be to anyone that's kind of maybe not sure what musical career path they want to kind of follow?
I guess in some ways I'm going to be talking to myself on this one, because there's days where I definitely don't know what exactly I want to do. Some days I want to keep doing the studio stuff. Some days I want to, just do the touring musician thing for a while. So I would say, at least in my experience, the thing that's been best for me is to try as many of those things out as you can. Some of which are harder to do, like finding a touring gig as a musician or doing session guitar stuff, but do what you can to kind of get a feel for what that's like, even if it's, instead of a real tour, it's just a 3 or 4 day run or something somewhere, or even if it's not a real like session guitar gig or something, find a group of friends that's writing some songs as a hobby for fun and ask them, hey, can I come play guitar on it or something? Just find a way to kind of get that experience and see what you enjoy the most. That's kind of what I've done. And I actually keep thinking of it that way the more and more I do each of those things, and it kind of readjusts my opinion on what I want to do at some points in time. Like some weeks, like I said, I want to do this more than the others. So it's good to kind of do different things, I guess. Just try them out, and you might enjoy one thing more than the other at some point, but kind of keep all your eggs in the basket, I guess.
Yeah, I kind of find myself, like, I'm primarily a guitarist. I can kind of half sing. I half know a bit about production. I teach full time, so that's kind of, I'm not looking to, I don't want to teach for my whole life. That's not what, I don't want that to be my primary thing forever, And I'm always like, would I make a good producer? Like, because I've got the background as a lot of people, I think, step into production in a bit of a, without having that background as like songwriters and musicians maybe, and then sort of step into this sort of vacuum where, like, I think a good producer really understands songs, not just, you know, good sounds. I think I've seen a lot of kind of producers on Instagram and stuff where I feel like, from what I've seen them put together, there's an understanding of sonics and like, but then when I listen to fundamentally what they've produced, I'm not massive on the actual content behind it, and it's like, yeah, I don't know where I was really going with that, but I think my point being, I guess, that I'm always like, there's so many avenues. I think it's easy to look at all these options and just have this kind of option paralysis, like that's always something I'm kind of, I think I know kind of what I want to do. I think I want to just pursue the songwriter side of things, but that's awesome. Yeah, that's an awesome role. And it's a much better role these days than like being a session musician, or back in the several decades ago, where you'd still get points on the songs that you played on, and these days, or at least for like session guitar players in country, for example, back in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, whatever, the guitar played a much bigger role in the song. You had just more guitar stuff going on. Now it's more of a it's more pulled back. It's more basic stuff. And so kind of, in a way, it makes sense, but you don't really get points on records anymore for session guitar stuff. Obviously you do for songwriting, right? You got royalties all over the place on that most of the time. So that's a good thing. But as far as, mentioning you thought about being a producer, or you've wondered about it, that's another great thing to get into. It's just, it's a hard one to get into in a lot of ways, because when you start out, for most people, you're going to start with smaller artists, unless somebody just hands something big to you. You're friends with somebody that's already made the climb to the top, and they give you an easy way in or something. But otherwise, you're going to start with these smaller artists. And man, being a producer working with smaller artists can be just pulling teeth, man. It's because they get so attached, and they're not yet at a point where they, I guess, will let a producer be the extra member of the band for that session, right? Or they're too attached, and it's too sentimental to them. They don't want anyone that's not in the band touching it. And if you make one suggestion, let's change this lyric here just a little bit, I think we could do something better. Oh no, man, this is how I wrote it. This is how I want it to be. And that's just, man, that's the most frustrating thing. I always like to use, like
to, I guess, as a comparison, for example, whenever I've dealt with that, it's like, imagine you're an author of a book, right? And how are you going to get into the huge book like retail stores or whatever? You're not going to do it on your own. You're going to go through a publicist, like a publishing house, right? And they're going to ship your book out everywhere. But when you go through that publishing house, because it's under their wing, they're not going to just take whatever you write and say, oh, this is gold. Here we go. Let's ship it to Books A Million or whatever. They're going to, proofread it. They're going to have their editors go through. They're going to edit it out and to make sure that it's the best that it can be before it's represented by their company and sent out to all these bookstores, right? And that's not them taking what you had and changing it and making it their own. It's making what you've done or be the best that it can be, rather. So it's the same way in the music world, right? So artists will bring in songs, or songwriters will pitch songs, and they'll get given to an artist or whatever the case, right? And then they'll go to record it, or they'll go in with a producer and they'll sit down with it. And that producer may take that song, which is already a good song, and just tailor it to that artist. Like maybe he hears some kind of character in the artist's voice and he wants to have the music behind it sort of match. Like maybe it's an artist who's a little more raunchy or a little more raspy, and they think it would sound cool in a darker style or something, anything like that. That's not changing the song from how it was. It's just enhancing it, and that's a big one for me is working with artists that can understand that and not get too sentimental and tell you, no, it's got to be exactly how it was written. But yeah, going back to what you said, that's definitely the hardest thing about producing in the early days. Is just trying to convince them that, this is not a big deal, and let you actually do your job. Aside of that, producing is awesome. I mean, the sky is the limit as far as that goes.
Are there any other sort of tips that you would give to up and coming artists before they get into the studio in particular?
Practice to a metronome. Obviously practice your material. And understand that, well, before that even, make sure that you're choosing someone that you're going to work with to mix your stuff, to engineer stuff, master it, whatever it may be. Make sure you're choosing them because you like their work, not just because they're the only person in your area and you don't know where else to go. Make sure you like what they do. Listen through their portfolio. Make sure you completely trust what they're doing and that you like their sound, and you're going to them for a reason other than you don't know where else to go or you're friends with them. And then once you get in there, let them do their job, right? Don't be so attached that you're unwilling to hear anything a different way. It can always, worst case, you let them show you their ideas with the song, let them change some things. And then if you just hate it by the end of it, I'm sure they're going to be okay with that and they'll revert it, right? But just let them do their work, because you got to remember, you're choosing these people for a reason. Every engineer sounds different, or their work sounds different. Every producer's creative mind works a little differently. So just go into it with that mindset. Keep an open mind. And I swear 9 times out of 10, as long as you have an open mind and you're willing to hear other people out and be honest with each other, you're going to end up with a much better product every single time.
Yeah, I think that was one of my biggest learning experiences going to the studio, is especially because the drummer who, with my old band, when we went into the studio, the drummer was the only one with studio experience, and it wasn't really I don't think it was like a proper studio, or maybe it was, but I think it was maybe just with an engineer. So yeah, he had this idea of, we'll just go in, we'll just do like a couple days recording and we'll come out and the song will be just a better version of, it will just be a high quality version of what we've got the demo of. And then we come out with this totally new song, it sounded like the song, but with loads of extra stuff in there that we just had not even scratched the surface of in terms of vocal harmonies, arrangement, layers, so much stuff that we just did not think to, because I don't regret any of it. We just, as new musicians, we just didn't think to, Mike, the drummer, would be the first to admit that he overplayed a bit on that song. Before the recorded version, I mean. And then I was always keen to keep riffs in maybe where they didn't need to be there, and singer always wanted to hit the high notes, and it's just like, you don't always need to do that,
Yeah, so
exactly.
It's
a bit of ego in there, I think. But what made you kind of, because what I have noticed a lot of the time is that with production, it tends to come after an instrumental practice. It tends to be a guitarist that turns to producing. I don't know many, I know some, but I don't know that many people that started wanting, like the first thing you tend to think of when you think of learning music would be like picking up the guitar or piano or something.
Right.
You don't see many kids kind of learning to produce music as much as they perfectly well could do. What was it that kind of, I'm assuming the kind of maybe guitar came first, but then what kind of turned you towards producing? What kind of made you interested in that?
So I think I was about 15. And like you hit the nail on the head. It turned out for me exactly how you described. I was a guitarist first. And kind of going back to earlier when I was mentioning how I started making videos at around 13 on YouTube. And those videos were absolutely terrible, obviously. But quality wise and playing wise, everything was terrible about it. But I got to, a couple of years in, I'm like, I want to try to make this a little better. Didn't know much at all. But I went and bought a little Line 6 UX1 interface. It's a little 2-channel interface to run with Pod Farm, the guitar amp sim. And because that's what a lot of people were doing at the time on YouTube for guitar covers and whatnot. So went and bought that, came with Pod Farm, set that up, finally figured out how to use it to record guitar into the computer. And that was great. So it was a huge improvement on my videos. And then a little more time goes by and I start realizing, well, I have two inputs on this interface, meaning I could, a mic input and an instrument input, meaning so I could record guitar and bass, and I could also record vocals. So I started thinking about it. What if I, taught myself how to program MIDI drums, and then I could record a whole band and like make some money from this. And it was never really a serious thought. But I did want to try it out. So I learned how to program MIDI drums. And then in my town, through my group of similar aged friends, I had some other friends and other bands and whatnot, and I would offer to record their song for like $50. I mean, if you spread that out over the amount of hours worked, that's probably like 50 cents an hour or something. But I would do it for like $50. And I remember my parents would take me over to their house with a laptop and a couple speakers, and I'd sit down and we'd start just hashing it out. And for me, it was just it was fun. Like, it wasn't even work. I mean, I was 15. It's not like I need a salary at that age. So I wasn't really concerned about the money or even considering it work or considering it a possible future career. It was just fun for me to do. And then one thing kind of just led to the other. Like, I started wanting to see if I could make mixes sound better and better, and wanting to learn about what I was doing so that I wasn't sitting there just clicking a bunch of buttons and hoping I figured it out as I went. And I guess just, one thing after the other, and started reinvesting into my gear, and it became a studio eventually.
Yeah. Do you ever find the work element can take away from the joy of the musical kind of stuff?
Oh yeah. That's something I battle with pretty regularly. And at the end of the day, it's, I tell this to people that are getting into the audio engineering world all the time, is that sooner than later, you need to, not be afraid to decline some work. And it sucks to do the first few times. And obviously you want to do it respectfully, of course, but, there's people or artists or bands, whatever, that'll reach out to me through like my website's email form. And part of that form includes a section where I ask them to link to any previous recordings, or YouTube videos. It doesn't matter what it is, just so I know what the band sounds like, Spotify link, whatever. And if it's something that I listen to and I'm just really not into, or it's just not my style, it doesn't mean it's necessarily bad. Sometimes it does, but it doesn't have to. If I'm just not really into the music, then I may not take the work, because working on that, will just not be fun at all. At that point, it's only about the money, just to get through with it. And that sucks to do. It's like the result's not going to be as good if you're not into it, if you're not passionate about it. And, I mean, there might be some people who are just genuinely passionate about, mixing and mastering or producing. It doesn't matter what kind of music it is, but I'm more so passionate about doing that for the music that I like. And I think that's most people, right? So the sooner you can get out of the habit of taking on any project that comes your way, or any band that's willing to pay you your rate, and start being a little selective, I guess, in what you take on, I think it makes your life a whole lot happier, or your work life a whole lot happier.
I know that from teaching, to be fair. Like, I get the odd few calls or emails now where I would normally, like before, I would just offer trial lessons to anyone, just be like, well, because obviously I just need to build a clientele, and there'd be some where I knew from like a minute in that they weren't going to pursue lessons with me. And like, there's an agency that used to send me I don't know what happened, they sort of just don't anymore, but they used to send me students, and they would just send me people who I knew just wanted to try the guitar for free, not like guitar lessons with me. They just wanted to try learning the guitar. And I actually did say to them, I was like, can you please stop sending me people unless they have a guitar, because they just, like, I just get people turning up who like have no interest in actually learning the instrument. I was like, at least if they've bought a guitar, I know. And because I found like I would have no trouble getting people to, because this just probably all just sets me up to look like a shit guitar tutor, basically, for what I'm telling you. But like, I had no trouble getting people to sign up if they went through my channels, but for some reason through that agency, like, they just had a habit of getting people who, I don't know what it was about their branding. Like, so having that discernment, it was so miserable. Some of them would maybe sign up for like 5 lessons and they wouldn't, and and then they'd quit. And it's just like,
man, that definitely resonates with me. I teach a little bit myself. Are you doing that full time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I only teach maybe 10 to 12 hours a week on the side. But yeah, I kind of go through the same struggle sometimes. For me, my only real restriction or whatever you want to call it that I have is I don't really take on kids younger than maybe 10, just because, and I used to, and I'm actually interested to hear how your experience is in this regard. But for me, in my experience, pretty much every kid that I taught under the age of 10, it felt more like I was being paid to babysit rather than teach, because their attention span just doesn't exist. God forbid there's a fly on the wall during the session because I'm going to not even be there anymore. Yeah. And it just became just the biggest headache. And I ended up starting to actually feel bad that these parents were paying me to teach their kid to play guitar, because I knew, after the lesson was over, they're going to forget everything we talked about.
Yeah, again, that was a thing with this agency particularly, where there's I teach a few kids who are like really, who I can tell are dedicated. There was one the other day where he was very interested. He's clearly very interested in learning, and he probably the most interested, actually, a younger kid. I can't remember how old he was. He was certainly like a younger kid. And he was bugging his, like, at the end of the session, he enjoyed it, obviously, and he went, Dad, I've been telling you I need to get an amp. And I was like, so he's obviously, he was a young kid, so he's obviously been doing his research, like, trying to, well, he's obviously got an inherent interest. So people like, kids like that, I'd happily teach. When I'm babysitting, it's just a bit like, but it's not like, it's nice seeing, and they pick stuff up so quickly, so it's nice. Or like they remember it well, so even if they don't put the time in, if they are interested, that is, they tend to remember things. So like, even if they don't practice that week, you can kind of pick up where you left off because they've still got it. Yeah. Whereas like adults, if you try and teach them something that maybe they're just not quite as interested in, it can sometimes just the next week it's like, don't know where they're at. So yeah, I always say, as long as you're interested, I don't really care. Right. Yep. What level you're at, kind of thing, or what age. I think the oldest I taught was like 77 or something. Wow. So like, yeah.
Were they just starting out?
No, funnily enough, he just got back in contact because he was sort of ill recently, so he stopped doing lessons. But no, I think he'd played a little bit. He knew some stuff, but he wasn't.
Okay.
Yeah, it's funny teaching such a range of people, you know. So I think,
sure.
the weirdest one, I had one guy turn up, and he, like, I just, you know, like I said, there are some that turn up and from the start, like, I know this guy's not interested. And what happened? Like, he turned up and he was like, can I show you some songs, Joe? And I was like, yeah, that'd be cool. Because, I want to see how, like, what he can do and stuff.
Yeah, sure.
And then he was like, this is the Frog song. I was like, what the fuck is this? And then he played like some GCD kind of stuff, and the guitar playing was kind of okay. And the song, I don't even know what he sang about. But it wasn't good. It was really, really bad. And then at the end of it, he was like, and for the record, I would never talk about an actual student of mine like this. I literally talked for about half an hour. And at the end of it, it was like, to be honest, Joe, like, I'm not interested in being famous or anything. I was like, fucking great, that's good. And then he's like, I'm just interested in the cold hard cash of songwriting. I was like, what? What are you on about? And then then the session got to the end, and he was talking about like us jamming and stuff, sort of implying that he wouldn't be paying for lessons. I was like, what? Where is this going? It was the weirdest lesson I've ever done.
No. I hope I don't ever have to deal with something like that.
Well, I mean, Go on.
I have dealt with some oddballs here and there. There's one guy I'd come into the store I teach at that literally refused to not tune he tuned his guitar. I mean, it was not a tuning I've ever heard of. It was not like an open tuning. It wasn't obviously like a drop tuning. He tuned his guitar so that, I'm trying to remember what it was. So I guess the relationship between the big E and the A string was drop tuned. Right. But then the A to D was like, if you bar it, like the third fret on the A and third fret on the D, that was also like drop tuned. And it kept just going down and down and down and down all the way down the neck. So it's just could bar any two strings anywhere and it'd be a perfect fifth.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a named tuning that I just don't know about. I've never heard of it.
Yeah.
But he refused and he wanted to learn all these songs. And he'd be like, well, you need to tune to this tuning because I'm not about to figure this out by ear with this fucking weird tuning. And he would just refuse to do it. So that didn't work out.
Yeah. So it's like a backwards guitar at that point, isn't it?
Yeah. Almost. Yeah. And then I had one guy, I think I don't know. It was so weird. He paid for a month of lessons, might've been 2. And then he paid for whatever it was. He paid for the last month, which he never even took. And then came in the day of his lesson, like sprinted into the store. It was like, hey man, I need my money back. And I'm like, well, I don't have cash on me. I could Venmo you it back or whatever. Cause he never took any of those lessons. So in that case, I was like, yeah, I mean, I'll give you your money back. You never even took one of the 4 that you paid for. So, it wasn't a big deal. I was like, well, I don't have any cash on me. I could Venmo you or whatever. He's like, oh man, no, I need cash right now. I'm in a hurry. I gotta go. Just like he was sprinting from the cops or something. Ended up the store owner was able to gave him cash out of the register and I just paid the owner back. But it was so weird. Like he busted up I was teaching somebody else. He busted up in there and just frantically like, man, I need my money right now. Where's my money? It was almost it was kind of scary because he was getting he was almost like kind of disgruntled and pissy. And I was teaching like a 12-year-old kid at the time. So that was really weird, but those are I guess the 2 weirdest, encounters I've had while teaching.
That's a weird one. Yeah. I don't think I've ever had anything like worrying in that sense, I've never been concerned in a lesson. I've never been concerned for my safety or the student safety. That's, I guess I'm it's one step in that direction.
I don't know. I wasn't like, my first thought was not necessarily like being concerned for mine or the student's safety, but there was a point where I was like, is he frantic because he is like, was he on drugs and it was having withdrawals and needed to get his fix right then and there? Was he like in like criminal trouble or something? Like I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what the why why he was so frantic, I guess. So I was just confused, and yeah, it was a weird thing, man.
Yeah, let's see. Yeah, I've had some. It's nice. What I think is nice now is it's got to the point where, and I think it's the same with any line of work where you're self-employed, where you get like, say, 1 in 10 people are like absolute will stay with you for life, not for life, but for a very long time.
Yeah.
So obviously, I'll take on 10 students, like 3 might stay for a while. Oh, no, I wouldn't take. That's a pretty low rate. I might contact 10, and then and then there'll be like 1 in 10, maybe even 1 in 20 is like there for the long run. Obviously, if you do that over a long time, you then don't have to replenish, as much, which is nice. But like, speaking of some other things that I kind of at a glance sort of got the impression, you have to sort of confirm or deny how interested you are in said things from looking at your sort of Instagram and stuff. So you're a software engineer, is that right?
Yeah. So that's something I've always done on the side. I don't do it as a career at the moment. That could change soon. I've wanted to do it. It's I do a lot of my own projects. I have a side business that I do, Colossal Bass, where I developed a MIDI bass instrument and I sell that. It's not a huge business or anything, but it's done pretty well, especially as a side gig. And so it doesn't take too much upkeep, but that's, passive income on the side, stuff like that. I've never really worked under a company doing it, but it's something for about the last decade that I've done, just building my own projects or contributing to different open source things that I've used or that has made my life easier in the projects that I've made or whatever. I've built some, done some freelance stuff, built some web panels and backends for different things. It's fun for me. It's definitely a fun hobby that I could turn into a career at some point. It's just, I guess, more about balancing that and the studio stuff and figuring out how I could do 2 full-time jobs more or less at the same time. But, I guess it's still doable because both are remote. Well, if I was to do development, I would want it to be remote. So in that case, both would be remote. But yeah, it's a tough balance if I was to do that, but definitely something to consider.
That's kind of weirdly a weird other way around than most people. When you think software engineering, the dream might be to do music, like it's a weird, like, the sort of the pipe dream might be the music. So it's a weird kind of other way around, I guess, than what I would perhaps typically. Yeah. For
me, it was just what came first, music came first. When I started playing guitar, I probably barely knew how to use a computer. So, and then, I had an interest with computers and just became interested in trying to figure out how to write code, and just kind of became a hobby.
That's really cool. Do you think you're like and this again ties in with a bit with the production, more on the Sonic's kind of side of things, like less so than the songwriting. Do you think you're maybe like an analytical sort of mind, or are you more a bit creative, bit of both? Like,
I would say more of an analytical mind if I had to pick one. I think for some things, I like my creative mind side of things, I guess. But in other things I don't. A lot of times I feel like I'm not as creative as I want to be. For example, a lot of producers these days that are good at writing really wacky effects things, like really, or lo-fi, or like almost electronic drum beats, but with a bunch of extra stuff thrown in. And I'm not really talking about EDM type stuff, but like the weird pop country stuff. Like there's so many weird effects and like electronic stuff going on, and just electronic like synth melodies here or whatever that are I listen to those things. I'm like, man, that is so off the wall. It's cool, but I would have never thought of that. And so I guess I get a little jealous sometimes when I hear those, because I'm like, man, I wish I could think of that kind of stuff. But then for other things, I feel like I am pretty creative. So averaging it out, though, I would say probably more of an analytical mind.
Yeah, I just thought that was it's always intriguing that I feel like the nature of the online world is maybe not so. It's friendlier to someone with an analytical mind, because you can you can go, oh, that video did X amount of views, and you can figure things out. Or like, whereas if you're creative, you might be really great at like just writing songs or whatever. Like, it doesn't have to be music, be it art or dance or something. I don't know. But if you don't know anything about, if you don't have an analytical sort of perspective, it's hard to then actually make something of that in a career sense, unless someone just finds you and just does it all for you. Which I think is pretty few and far between.
I think you can, I even think you can kind of tell, as far as like guitar videos on Instagram go, or, Instagram, whatever. I think you can almost tell who has an analytical mind and who has more of a creative mind just by the content alone. You probably could do so for any sort of content, but I'm more specifically talking about guitar videos just because that's what I'm most familiar with and what I make myself. But even looking at, there's some guys with big followings who their videos are just raw camera audio. They just just phone videos, right? Just videos off their phone. And they still have huge followings. And I think in those cases, those guys have more of a creative mind. They're not really looking at the analytics or the stats on their last video to see how it went. They know people like them for their videos, for their playing, for whatever it is. And they don't need to do anything flashy for it. And then you've got people, I guess I would fall more into this category in the more analytical sense, where you put a little bit more work into the video. Like you've got multiple camera angles, you do a full mix, whatever, you're recording direct into the computer or whatever. And I don't always do it. I don't do it every video, but I do analyze some of my stats to see if I can find patterns over time on things that do better than other, or especially like the time that I post. I always do it prior to noon my time because in my experience, that just does the best. But also, if you think about it, it covers. If I post at, let's say, 10 a.m. Central Time, Central United States, then that's 8 a.m. Pacific. People are just getting into work. They don't want to start working yet. They're going to look at their Instagram feed. 10 a.m. You're right there before lunch, or 10 Central. You're right before lunchtime. People, on their lunch breaks. Eastern, you're already pretty much in lunch hour. So you've got that. Everything's kind of looking at Instagram in the US around that time. And it just works for me. But to get back on track, like I feel like people that put more effort into the way their video looks and sounds are doing it because they're trying to attract more. They're testing things out. They're looking at the data, or seeing what does better, and they're, trying different things. And that's, I definitely fall more into that category, I think.
It's I think I'm a creative person, but I think the nature of I think I'm probably maybe somewhere along the lines of where you're at with that, actually, in terms of the balance. But I think the other thing is it's so much easier to be analytical in the sense that, like, for me anyway, it's easier for me to look at the stats and try and figure out a pattern, or to figure out, like, is that title better than the other? If you look at YouTube, maybe it was like, what thumbnail? Because you can just go, which one's doing better, Whereas being creative, you've got to have that start point of staring at the instrument and just being like, right, what do I do? And I think I need to try and train my head out of the temptation to fall into spend the afternoon like changing the titles of my videos, or like, developing new thumbnails, or like doing that side of things, and just go, yes, that's useful, but actually I need to just focus on what I'm trying to make a success of. I think that's quite a difficult distraction to try, and you got to think about it, but there's no point thinking about all your analytics if you're never going to make anything useful for them, So I don't know, that's a whole rabbit hole. But the other thing I noticed, and what did make me laugh, actually, I was looking at through your story highlights and see you got lots of countries that you've kind of visited and stuff. Funnily enough, so I'm in Birmingham, UK, and I saw well, that's the thing. I saw your stories of like places that I go past all the time.
Like what?
Like the custard factory in Digbeth.
Yeah,
the graffiti and stuff.
Yeah, dude, all the graffiti.
Yeah. So
yeah, man, that was so cool.
So funnily enough, at the time, I looked at when you put, I think it was about 3 years or something ago that you must have done that from
November of 18. So there's like a few months before COVID hit.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I would have been starting music school in Digbeth when you were visiting, which is quite funny. So like it's we may well have even walked past each other. There's the slightest chance that might happen.
Is that like right around the corner from the Custard Factory? I feel like there was a school right there.
Yeah, there's a little music school there. Yeah.
That's okay. Yeah, I didn't recognize the name, but I do remember seeing that. Wow, that's small world.
Yeah. So, but do you have many memories of Birmingham? I always ask people this when they go through because it's just makes me
we did I can't remember the name of it. It's right there on the Custard Factory. That's in the Custard Factory, like a sexual mini golf place.
It's called Ghetto Golf. Yeah,
Ghetto Golf. Yes, man, that was something else. I absolutely loved that. It was a day trip for me. I was there. It was part of a month-long backpacking trip, but I've got a good friend. He actually is the other half of the Colossal Bass MIDI bass software that developed. He lives in Derby.
Oh yeah.
And so while I was there in England in general, I stayed with him and we did a trip to was it Nottingham, I think?
Yeah.
And Birmingham. I can't remember the Matlock or
yeah, I think that's the place.
What's it called?
Glenn Matlock is the Sex Pistol. But I imagine there's a place called
it's like a small town kind of up in some hills.
That's a lot of England.
Yeah, isn't it though? Man, I can't think of it, but we moved around and traveled around a little bit, but Birmingham was like a day thing. And that's what sticks out the most to me actually is the Custard Factory, Ghetto Golf. I don't know. I'm trying to remember now what else we would have done there.
I was just wondering. Yeah, I'm not from Birmingham. I just live here. Right? Like, But I was just wondering what you thought. It's mixed reviews.
No, I loved it. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Ghetto Golf. I'll never forget Ghetto Golf.
It's a fun place. There's what else have they got? There's that whole area is so cool now. It's like there's so much stuff. Like there's like a batting cage, like baseball bat. Like
Really.
Yeah. Obviously, you have drinks. Everyone gets really drunk and just like I want to know how many people have been hit in the face there. Which from the
probably quite a few.
Probably you weren't meant to wear a helmet, but you technically don't have to, sort of thing. So, so yeah, it's a very cool area. But I was going to ask, like, my sort of question was, are you into traveling, or was that just like a one-off thing?
Yes, yeah, man. I love traveling. I try to do it as much as I can. I just actually got back from Australia. I think originally, didn't we discuss having this like a few months ago or a couple months back?
I remember we talked about October or something, didn't we? Maybe.
Yeah. So I was in Australia for a month. My second time being there, went for a friend's wedding, and I'm not going to go all that way just for 3 days to see a wedding and then make the 15-hour trip back. Well, actually, it's all said and done, more like a 24, 27-hour trip with layovers and everything added in. But so I stayed for a month. We went around to a bunch of different spots and had a good old time. But now it's on to planning the next one, whenever that is. Yeah,
that's wicked. Yeah, that's there's so many places. What's the top of your kind of bucket list of where you need to go?
I think I'm reevaluating now because I've gone to all the ones that have previously been at the top of my bucket list. I'd say my favorite that I've been to as far as nature is concerned is Iceland for sure.
Cool.
I definitely want to go back there.
Okay, cool.
I would say next, and I wanted to do it on this last trip to Australia, but we just didn't have the time. But one of the next ones on my list would probably be New Zealand. I really wanted to make the hop over there to New Zealand. Maybe somewhere like Colombia. I'd really like to do more Eastern Europe as well. When I did that month backpacking trip, I was just I did England, Ireland, Scotland, and Iceland. I feel like I'm missing one, but no, I think it was just those. What was that 4? Yeah, England, Ireland, Scotland, and Iceland. Yeah, so I didn't really go that far east. And I would really love France, Switzerland, and Italy, and I'd really love to do all that as well.
It's funny because what we consider Eastern Europe is like more former sort of Soviet countries. Things.
Oh, right, yeah.
Because that is technically the further. Yeah, because I guess for you it's all east, isn't it?
Yeah, well, more east than the UK, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
And actually more so Europe now, technically.
Yeah. I went to Ljubljana.
Or EU, I should say, rather. Huh? More of the EU, not Europe. But you know what I meant.
Yeah. I recently went to Ljubljana in Slovenia. That's an amazing place.
Yeah, how'd you like it?
Oh, it's so good. I went to the single best. Watch my girlfriend and I didn't just go on my own because she'll watch this and be like, I was there. I went to the single best bar I've been to in my life. It was this, and I think it was partly, sometimes it's like it's sort of serendipitous in a way, because you kind of, sometimes it's to do with just being in the right moment. But the weather was really terrible. It wasn't great for the whole few days we were there, but it was really terrible the first couple of days, like lightning and thunder and everything. But obviously we still went around, and I was quite ill as well. And we're like, well, let's find a little bar before, just for finish the day. And it was this it was like a speakeasy kind of bar. It was very hidden away. It was on Google Maps. Like, we found it. It wasn't hard. It wasn't like a, secret. I remember we just turned up, and it was like, we opened the door and everyone turned around and looked. So obviously there's a bit of a like closed atmosphere. And it was so like, it's only a tiny bar. Like, it's the size of my living room maybe. But the cocktails were the best cocktails I've had. Yeah. And the atmosphere, it was all like, it was just very cozy, lots of like classic music. There was a piano in there, and someone went and played some like film scores and things on it. It was like just some random guy. It was like, it felt it felt like I was walked into a movie kind of thing and then the next day, we went there, and it was our last day there, and he was like, yeah, we're closing up for about a month tomorrow. I was like, oh, so it's really good timing. So if you go to Ljubljana ever, I would recommend it. It wouldn't be the top of many people's list in the US, I'd imagine, but
I'll have to add it to it.
Great place. Yeah. And then we went to Venice, which was just awesome. Really
cool would love place to go there as well.
Yeah, it's high on the list for me. Yeah, man. I mean, we've covered quite a few. We've traversed across a number of sort of things, which is cool. So it's always nice to be able to talk about things, like a bit.
Oh, for sure.
Outside of just like your day-to-day musical conversations, I guess maybe. So yeah.
No doubt.
But yeah, if that's cool with you, I'll get you to ask your question for the next guest, and also promote an artist. It's that moment where I've forgotten that there's a question.
Let's see. I guess you can edit out some space here if I think for a second.
I'll leave the thinking space in. Let people judge.
The clock's ticking.
I should probably put like a little timer and see what the longest thinking time is for someone.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to ask, is it all right if I do a sort of a 2-part question?
Yeah, for sure. The more conversation starter I get, the better.
Yeah. So the first part's a little more generic, but I think I'll follow it up with something. So my question is, what would you go back as far as your guitar playing goes? If you could go back and tell your, 15-year-old self, however old you were after you were like a year into playing, right? A year or two into playing. If you could go back to that period in time of your time as a guitar player and tell yourself one thing, what would it be? And what did you later on have to go back and fix, if anything, as far as technique goes, right? So like for me, it was music theory. I neglected it for years and years and years, and it made it really difficult to kind of learn once you're already an established guitar player, once you already can play guitar, even if, however good that might be, if you've done it for 7-8 years, whatever, and you just completely neglected all theory, then learning it at that point is like trying to teach an old dog new tricks a little bit. So yeah. So I guess recapping, what would you go back and tell yourself as a guitarist of maybe 1 or 2 years nowadays? And what did you have to correct once you became a better guitar player? Some like any bad habits that you formed when you were younger?
Nice. I mean, to be fair, I don't just chat to guitarists, so I can just make that about like music.
Oh, yeah.
But it can apply to any. Yeah. It can even apply to just like career if you want it to.
Right,
so
sure.
no, that's an interesting one. Yeah. I've had the like advice that you would give to your younger self question, which is a cool one.
So sort of like that, but also
it's different. It's a different. You've spun it differently. It's all good.
What did you have to correct? What did you figure out later on that you like a technique or something that you did wrong?
Yeah. Nice one. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So also, I need you to plug an artist.
Plug an artist
one that deserves some love, maybe that you haven't. That doesn't get the love they deserve. So one that deserves some love, maybe that hasn't got the love they deserve.
Let's see here. Man, I have so many like Instagram friends at the moment, like doing guitar videos and stuff.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be like a band. It can just be a person or an artist or something.
Yeah, like Instagram guitar dudes. I'm gonna go with my buddy Mike Tuck. His Instagram is, let's see, what is it right now? Mike Telly Tuck, Miketele, and then Tuck, all one word. Mike Telly Tuck. He's a fantastic country guitar player. Super nice guy. I watch his videos all the time, and I just love every one of them. So definitely check him out.
Nice. That's a good one. If you've got anything you want to sort of plug, then go ahead. Some people have this really well prepared, this little end section,
Yeah, well, I guess the only two things would be if you don't follow me yet on Instagram, you can check out my stuff. It's Eric Woolard 95. I do run a recording studio, Warlord Studios. You can check that out at warlordstudiosms.com. And if you ever are in need of a MIDI bass instrument, check out Colossal Bass. That's colossalbass.com. It's we've got two different MIDI bass instruments. One is a sampled Warwick Corvette, and the other is a Music Man Stingray. Both are contact instruments, so makes it really easy to kind of pre-pro or demo songs, or even use in actual productions. I've used it quite a bit in some stuff where the bass player was either shit, or the bass was shit, or they didn't have a bass player. So it saves you in those cases, and makes it really easy to write out songs quickly without having to record. Whatever the case, if you think you're interested in that, check it out, Colossal Bass.
Well, no one ever wants to deal with bass players. It's
just rare.
Just big guitar, isn't it? Just do it on that
guitar.
Just get the guitarist to do it, an octave down. Yeah. Nice. Well, that can be the message of the podcast. Yeah. Wicked. Well, yeah, that's been awesome, man. Thank you very much.
Well, man, thank you for having me. It's been a fun time.